sharply decrease government spending and pay off in a number of years in my lifetime. I believe it could be done. Now, the other thing is that if we were to secede, people are afraid that the government would use force to bring us back into the fold, as Lincoln did with his Civil War to reunite the North and the South. And that's a very, very likely scenario. I think that Democrats would push hard to have Texas whipped into place. I think that the idea that the bastion of self-reliance, conservatism, freedom were to be beaten into submission, I think Democrats would find that very, very desirable as an outcome. And I think that Barack Obama probably would put it off, but I think that if Hillary won, which she would without Texas there to vote on it, I think Hillary would make a point to come out and come out swinging at Texas, for that matter, if we were to try and secede. But there's this. 80% of the volunteer military that we have in the United States comes from southern states. 80%. Now, I don't know about you, but if 80% of the military comes from the South, millions of those people being from Texas, I don't believe for a second that those men and women in the armed services would come to Texas to kill Americans who want to be free. I don't believe that's a possibility. There are some. There always will be. But I believe the vast majority of the military, I believe that at least 60 to 70% of that 80% will refuse to attack Texans and Texas, which of course is fantastic. I believe that half of the military will absolutely categorically refuse. And with that, there will of course be issues. Namely, I believe that the Navy would probably blockade Texas and the Gulf of Mexico and prevent us from being able to ship oil and natural gas and many of our goods that generate income for the state by sea. I also believe that if we were to start shipping things through Mexico, that it would not be profitable to the state. And I think they would probably cut off the northern borders in terms of shipping goods and services and allowing people to pass through. But in terms of military action, I believe the fact that we have a extremely large populace of well-trained riflemen and women in our state, I believe that if troops were to come into Texas after secession, it would give them a run for their money. I believe that to be a fact. Now, that being said, airstrikes and drones would be a horrendous problem for us to deal with. I mean, I don't know if you've seen how much Obama loves to use drone strikes, but he will kill many people at a wedding to get one guest. He will destroy, an entire party of people to attack one. And that's something that would be a very serious concern. And it's something that really would affect us here in Texas. If he was to unleash this drone warfare on our state, it would be a problem. I don't know how the Texas military stands in terms of anti-air artillery. Probably not very well. But there you have it. I mean, if we were fortunate enough to be able to defend from drones, that would be great. But I think that would be the biggest issue in terms of military conflict with the United States. Now, again, this is all conjecture, and I don't support secession. I don't believe we're there yet. But I would not be surprised if in the next decade it is something we need to start voting on. Would not be surprised at all. With the way things are going, it's really not surprising. But the point is that we can start doing things at the state level to fight against the injustices and the theft and blocking of our rights as Americans, as humans, because our rights are natural. Our rights do not come from government. This is something that Democrats and progressives and these other non-logical people, the non-rational individuals in America, that they've tried to spread across the country, and they've succeeded for the most part, which is a disgusting notion. They've convinced people that our rights do not come from our Creator, that they do not come as a condition of being human. They have convinced people that our rights are given to us as privileges from the government, meaning they can be revoked at any point in time and for any arbitrary reason. For example, the TSA searching 3- and 4-year-old girls and demanding veterans remove their prosthetics after serving this country and losing a limb, searching elderly women for bombs and things of that nature. Not to mention, you've got new court proceedings that have, new court rulings that have come down the pipe that say that border agents have 100-mile radius of the border in which they can search laptops, computers, and possessions in the interest of border security. 100 miles from the border, you don't have a border security interest. You do not have a right to an unreasonable search and seizure. Now see, this is why I love watching the videos of how to handle border checkpoints and illegal drunk driving checkpoints and illegal citizenship checks. As an American citizen, we have the right to travel unmolested in this country. Now, obviously, they have the right at the border to check your passport. They have that right. A nation has the right to a regulated border. But it is completely unreasonable to think that they can seize your laptop, download everything that's on it, and then not return it for months. It's absolutely insane to think that these officers on the border have a right to probe your body without reasonable suspicion. They can't just violate your person because you're crossing the border. They have to have reasonable suspicion that you ought to be violated. Now, of course, if you're being uncooperative, as many libertarians and freedom-minded people are, that is not, of course, suspicion, but it's not helping your case. And quite frankly, if you file a complaint, nobody's going to care, because the system is corrupt and does not care about your rights to begin with, so what the hell does your complaint matter? But the point is, we're seeing across the board our rights being stripped from us. It's like Edward Snowden said, a child born today will have no concept of privacy whatever, because it will have never existed for them. Their phones, tablets, even their Game Boys. If you've got the Nintendo DS or whatever, the PlayStation Vita, any of these handheld gaming systems, they use a computer or a tablet, and even these smart televisions, these kids will have no concept of privacy because they will have never had it. All these devices that are geared towards children can be monitored by the government without warrant. And that's not even a conspiracy theory or a speculation. That's truth. And their emails, their Facebook, anything like that, are being violated by the government as well, being searched, and even private companies searching them for advertising is a concern. Plus, kids are growing up in a society where they're being taught that it is normal and acceptable for government agents to be at the airport, to take a scan of your body, which is basically a naked picture of you, and keep it on file, and then to violate you by touching your private parts because you may be a terrorist. Look, laws and regulations and violations of our rights cannot and must not be measured based on their intentions. If we were to measure every law based on its intention, why then Obamacare would be a good law. And of course, as educated Americans, you know better than that. Some of the worst legislation in the history of mankind was made with pretty words and good intentions. Look at Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty. It has not uplifted the millions that it's claimed to. It has perpetuated a cycle of poverty and removed a need for self-reliance to survive from people's lives. People aren't worried about starving. People aren't worried about being homeless. Uncle Sam will help them. Rather than needing to get a job, rather than starting their own business. Now, just to put it in perspective, there was a little boy in Texas this last summer. He was, I believe, 12 years old. He mowed lawns all summer, and he does it every year. He mowed lawns all summer, and he donates the money to charity, which I think is ridiculous. He should keep it in this situation once you hear it. But the boy this last summer made between $30,000 and $35,000. That's just in one summer. I mean, imagine if a grown-up were to mow lawns year-round, how much money they could make. If a little boy with a push mower can make 30 to 35 grand before taxes, which is more than I make, I don't see why an adult can't go spend $200 on a lawnmower as a down payment and then go make, tens of thousands of dollars to support their family. I don't see why that's not a viable option, but it's not, and it all stems from the same place. It all stems from the notion that need and intention are what matter when making laws. And this is the reason that Texas will probably have to secede in the next 10 years, or will at least have to consider it in order to snap Washington back into its place. This is the reason that NSA nullification laws and its like need to gain traction in states. These are all intertwined. All of these topics line right up. If we don't start working here in our state to push out the government in places it ought not be, like in your bedroom, in your body with your health care, in your life with its spying through the devices that the private sector has provided us to make our lives more efficient and enjoyable, if we do not remove government from these areas of our lives, we don't extricate it like a cancer, if we do not remove it like surgeons, we are only doomed to become more cancerous as our healthy bodies are consumed by the diseased